Hey guys, Jason here. Welcome back to another video here on the channel. And this is the first video, well, besides the new album, this is the first video in the series of videos I will be doing of where I am reviewing every Five Finger Death Punch album, going track by track, and giving my thoughts on the whole thing, which I already did a video, this is a way long time ago, on my channel. Where I ranked every Five Finger Death Punch album and put them in a tier list. But I think now I'm going to review every Five Finger Death Punch album, because ever since that video and ever since the new album came out, my thoughts have sort of changed, or they may sort of be a little different ever since that video, all the way back at the end of 2022. That's crazy. And now it's August of 2026. So, yeah, it's crazy. It's been almost 4 years ever since I've created that video, and almost 4 years of me on YouTube. That is crazy to think about. But enough of that. Let's get into the actual video today. So, today we're going to be talking about all about Five Finger Death Punch. Well, in particularly Five Finger Death Punch's first album, which was released in 2007, The Way of the Fist. And for all these albums, if there is like a deluxe sort of thing, I will be talking about it because I am a fucking nerd. I'm a Five Finger Death Punch nerd, so I'm going to be talking about the deluxe albums and the deluxe bonus tracks. So, yeah. So just know that. Before we get track by track, let's just talk about the time. Let's just talk about where everything was at when Five Finger Death Punch came onto the scene and in 2005, and then released their first record in 2007. So when they sort of came onto the scene, you had all these metalcore bands coming out, like, Killswitch Engage, All That Remains, Trivium, which I did a Trivium tier list as well, so go watch that video. And that might be another series I do. I might review every Trivium album, because I think they're supposed to be releasing some music soon, actually. Yeah, you had all these different bands, All That Remains, Killswitch Engage, Trivium, Bullet for My Valentine, and then you had every, like, other metalcore band that sort of wanted to sound like these bands, that wanted to sound exactly like these bands. And then on the other side of that spectrum, without going into, like, extreme metal, like deathcore, metalcore, or I mean, not metalcore, deathcore, death metal, black metal, or any other form of extreme music, you had other bands that sort of had the rough sort of groove or thrashy edges, like Lamb of God. You had Devil Driver coming around at that time. Machine Head has been a thing for like a decade at that point. You had those bands that sort of had that groovy, sort of riffy, hard edge to them, but you also had the melodic metalcore bands coming out. And when Five Finger Death Punch sort of came onto the scene, I'm gonna say, like, before they had their sound, and before they became like the band that we really know of them as, like a hard rock / metal band, or people that don't like them will call them butt rock, whatever. But before we knew them as that, they had a different sound. Like, Zoltan, the guitarist, like the founder of the band, like he sort of perfected that sort of in-between sort of sound. You had, like, the melodic choruses of the metalcore bands, but you had the groovy riffage, the hard, like, sort of, how do I explain this? Like, sort of, like, hard-ass, like, tough guy sort of attitude. I mean, that's how Five Finger Death Punch has always sort of been, but especially with this first album, that's how it was. It was very melodic, but it was also really, really heavy. And so I feel like people around the time that the album came out sort of felt that it was like a breath of fresh air. Of course, you had the like metal elitists that have always been into like extreme music, extreme metal. They were never gonna like it. But but for the people that were into like the more melodic sort of metal stuff, like metalcore and even hard rock, I would say, like they were definitely into it, and it was a new sort of thing that came around. So yeah, let's actually talk about The Way of the Fist. Let's talk about this whole album. So on the regular edition, there's 12 tracks. Then there's an edition, I think it's the second pressing of the CD, which has the Bleeding acoustic. I have the CD somewhere. It's in the book. I think my dad gave it to me, actually. And then you have the deluxe edition, which has the 2 other tracks, which I'll get into, but which makes it 15 tracks. But the deluxe edition is like very, very, very hard to find. Unlike some of the other albums where you can easily find it, this is probably the hardest deluxe album from Five Finger Death Punch that you can find. But anyway, let's get track by track. So 15 tracks because we're including the deluxe, because why the fuck not? And we're gonna start off with Ashes. This is the introduction to Ivan Moody in Five Finger Death Punch. Before that, we knew him. He was in Motograder and the other band I'm forgetting, but he was in those. And then, but this is the introduction to him and his vocals in Five Finger Death Punch, and it's sort of like this. The intro of this track is sort of like a tough guy sort of intro. I do like it, but then we get to like this like double bass drumming sort of melodic guitar section, which is like the actual sort of intro. Then we get like a riff, sort of thrashy sounding verse to start us off in the verses, and then we get a melodic chorus in the track. And so that's what it was. It was sort of copying the same formula of the metal bands with the nasty ass verses, but the melodic clean choruses, but sort of Five Finger Death Punch doing it their style. And this album is their heaviest album. I'm gonna say, because people like to say, Five Finger Death Punch is sort of like this, and I sort of think this too, especially like the newer Death Punch. Five Finger Death Punch is sort of this hard rock / metal band, like where they have metal tracks, but they also sort of lean into hard rock. But this album is different. This is their heaviest album, and I'm going to call this a true metal. Like, this is a true metal album. There's really no hard rock on this, or anything that I would call hard rock. Like, this is a true metal album. Of course, not like fucking Archspire or Punch and Stench or like anything death metal like, but just to name just a few random bands. But for like a metalcore / like modern metal album, it is a true metal album. And I would even argue that War is the Answer, which I'll talk about, is still a true metal album. But the new Death Punch is hard rock. But now I'm getting onto another tangent. Let's get onto the title track, The Way of the Fucking Fist. This is probably one of the heaviest Death Punch songs ever. You had the heavy-ass double bass drumming in the verses. It sort of sounds thrash, actually, without having like a D beat attached to it. But then you have like a melodic sort of guitar sort of thing that we get. And this is pre-Jason Hook, so yeah. We don't really... The solos are a little different, but sort of this melodic sort of guitar thing we have. But the song is heavy as fuck. Then we get to Salvation, which is sort of the same sort of thing. Sort of the same little form, like a melodic chorus, but we have a heavy-ass, like, chugging riff. Like in this as well, sort of groove metal sort of influence there. Then we get sort of like melodic with probably one of the slower songs on the album, The Bleeding, which, even though it's one of the slower songs, it's actually still a really, really heavy track. Because again, Death Punch, this was their heavy sound. Like this was this was the original Death Punch, and this is a true sort of metal thing. Nothing really, I wouldn't say this is like even hard rock. Like there's nothing really hard rock about this. This is true metal at its core. But anyway, we go from The Bleeding, which is this melodic section. This is like an anthem that they play at their concerts. To this day, this is like one of my favorite Death Punch songs, at least on this album, along with The Way of the Fist. And yeah, we have A Place to Die, which is very heavy but also very melodic. It's really, really fast. A heavy verse, but you have a very, very melodic chorus. You see that Five Finger Death Punch is really trying to find their sound here. They're really, really honing in that heavy / melodic sort of thing, but it's not metalcore, and it doesn't really have any breakdowns. It's more like a modern metal sort of thing. It's sort of like a thing that Trivium would go on to do with later albums, like, I shouldn't really say In Waves. I would say more, yeah, when they get to, like, What the Dead Men Say, Sin in the Sentence, like, those albums, it's sort of the sound of Trivium, but I don't want to say it's the sound of Trivium, because the sound of Trivium is a little more technical than that, and this is not really technical. Five Finger Death Punch has never really been, I don't want to call them a technical band, because they're not a technical band. But anyway, then we get to The Devil's Own, which, again, it's sort of some of the same sort of thing. We get, like, a chuggy riff. We get this cool little bridge with Ivan, like, screaming. And, yeah, and then we get to White Knuckles, which actually sort of has a breakdown in it. I do like it a lot. Taking back control with my knuckles. So that is the song on here that sort of has a breakdown to it. It's a really, really heavy track, but again, we get a melodic chorus again, with sort of some singing in the verses. Then we get Can't Heal You, which that track right there is probably one of my favorites, simply because, we, in, like, the ends of the verses, we sort of get this, thing where Ivan's sort of, like, humming, but we have, well, it's not really humming, but it's sort of like that, but then we have, like, these spoken word vocals that really add some atmosphere sort of things to the song. And then the chorus, of course, with some screaming. And the riff on that song is really good. The guitar solo is actually pretty good. I think Daryl Roberts, the guitarist in the band before Jason Hook, did that solo. I'm trying to remember. They're not anywhere close to, like, a Jason Hook solo or even an Andy James solo. Like, all the solos on this album are nowhere close to that, but they're still melodic, and they're still, like, really, really fun to listen to. But then we have Death Before Dishonor, which, again, sort of the same thing. Again, this album doesn't really have anything that's special to it, but it's really, really good. I do like the song of this message, or I do like the message of this song lyrically, I would say. I do like the lyrics to this song. Then we get Meet the Monster, which is sort of a preview of what we would expect from, let's say, like, once we get to Wrong Side of Heaven, Right Side of Hell, Volume 1, Volume 2, the intro riff is sort of, it's sort of like a preview of what we would start to expect out of, let's say, like, the fairly newer Death Punch. So we have that sort of thing. sort of verse, chorus, sort of the same thing. Then we get to Never Enough, which is also one of Five Finger Death Punch's sort of anthems that they always play at their concerts. This is a sort of a slower sort of song with not a lot of screaming, more melodic sort of singing. This is where we get sort of more of Ivan's introduction to spoken word vocals that we would see on future Death Punch releases. Then with the regular edition, we end with Stranger Than Fiction. What the fuck did I just do there? I didn't even realize, but that sounded so good. That sounded like such a good, like, rhyme. I don't even know how that worked, but it did. With the regular edition, we end with Stranger Than Fiction. But, yeah, Stranger Than Fiction. This is where Death Punch, we sort of get a preview of what to expect with the sort of slower songs. I wouldn't even really call this a ballad, but this sort of sounds like, well, the introduction sort of sounds like a ballad, but it sort of sounds like, the best way I can explain it sounds like the Way of the Fist version of Hard to See. It sort of sounds like that song, which we'll talk about Hard to See in the War's the Answer video, because that's one of my favorite Five Finger Death Punch tracks. It's really good. But this track sort of feels like that. It sort of feels like the Way of the Fist version of Hard to See, and it's pretty good to end the, let's just say, the standard edition. But then we got the Bleeding Acoustic, which some people argue that that's the better version of the Bleeding. I actually sort of like I like them both. I really do like them both. But I sort of do prefer the regular standard edition of the Bleeding. So, yeah. But they're both, like, really good. They both have their places. Now, I will say, I did not like the fucking 2025 version that they re-recorded of the Bleeding, because for whatever reason, well, I didn't actually like a lot of the 2025 versions of the Five Finger Death Punch songs that they did. Especially go listen to, what's the fucking worst one I've ever listened to? The 2025 version of Burn Motherfucker. Like, that track was already as good as it was. Like, why the fuck would you re-record? I mean, I get why they're doing it, but, dude, it wasn't, like, you removed all, like, the screaming, the heaviness, well, not really the heaviness, but sort of everything that made the track as great as it was. And it was sort of felt like the same thing with the Bleeding, with that 2025 version of the track. At least the acoustic version, sort of, the song was already sort of more mellow than, like, the other songs on the album, on The Way of the Fist, but at least the acoustic version sort of embraced that, sort of thing. But, like, the 2025 version, it was sort of trying to act like the new regular version with better production, but instead, it's just the singing without the screaming in the chorus. You gotta have the screaming in the chorus, because it fits the fucking lyrics. Like, I don't know, but I'm tired of ranting about that. But now we get to Deluxe. So we have, From Out of Nowhere, which, has this sort of country sort of thing, influence sort of thing with a riff. I don't even remember if it's actually an original song, but I think it is. I don't remember. It sounds like a cover song, but it doesn't sound like a cover song. But the chorus is great. There's not really a lot of screaming, but it feels like a heavy Death Punch track. That's all we really got to say about it. The sort of guitar sort of that thing is really, really catchy. When the double bass drumming comes at the end of the song, it's really good. But then we get to A New Level, which was originally by Pantera, and Five Finger Death Punch did a cover of it. And this is probably the rarest Five Finger Death Punch song. Yeah, this is probably the rarest Five Finger Death Punch song. Like, only like super fans or diehard fans like are gonna know of this. It's not even on like Five Finger Death Punch. Well, I think From Out of Nowhere is not even on Five Finger Death Punch's official channel, but this song is definitely not. Like, if you're trying to find it, you have to find a re-upload of it because it's not even on their official YouTube. But anyway, the song itself is great, or it's good, but again, I still like the original Pantera version better. Like, that's just obvious. And what the fuck is up with the auto-tune? It sounds like Ivan was just put on through, like, so much, like, auto-tune that it's not even matching up with, like, the key of the song. I don't even know if it's auto-tune. It might be just, like, pitch correction or something, but I think they were just, like, I think when they recorded it, it was just, like, whatever, we're gonna just fucking record this. But, yeah, I don't know. The chorus of the song is great. The way that, like, it was produced, it does sound like the vocals do sound like when there's some reverb on, like, the chorus vocals, and makes it actually sound really good. The guitar solo makes it sound really good with the extra riff sort of in there because of the extra guitarist. Yeah, I don't know. There's a reason why it's the rarest Death Punch song to ever exist, and it's because it's just not the best. Five Finger Death Punch would go on to do some better covers and some worse covers, which we'll get into in future album videos. But for this song, it's not bad. It's good. But again, like the Pantera, we could definitely see that Five Finger Death Punch, especially Ivan, was very, very influenced by Pantera. I think he even said it was, like, his favorite band. But, dude, yeah, I don't know. They have done better covers of stuff. So, A New Level, yeah. But, yeah, that is The Way of the Fist. I will say, this is not the best Five Finger Death Punch album, in my opinion. It is definitely up there with the top 5 Five Finger Death Punch albums. But I think what holds it, really puts it down for me is just because it's the first album and the production. Wasn't ever really a big fan of the production. War is the Answer sort of embraced that sound, and they got, more ballads and stuff, and we'll talk about that later. And, yeah, I don't know. It's still really good. It is not as bad as, I would say, some of the newer Five Finger Death Punch albums are, that we'll talk about, but I'm going to still always put it in the top 5 Death Punch albums, and it's an album that I would always go back to. I will say that. So, not as good as some of the other albums we'll get to, but not as bad as some of the other albums we'll get to. And again, none of the albums are really bad. I just don't like a lot of albums as much as some albums. So, The Way of the Fist, it's kind of the middle of the road for me, because, yeah, it's the production, and, yeah, I'm glad they did re-record some of the stuff, but, like, the fucking, like, the re-recordings of all the 2025 Five Finger Death Punch songs just suck. And it's not even because of the production, it's just because of the way that, like, the vocals are, for whatever reason. I don't know why. It fucking sucks. But I don't know. That's just my opinion. But yeah, The Way of the Fist, really, really good start to Five Finger Death Punch's career, and a really good album. Go check it out, and I will link a playlist in the description. So, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next Five Finger Death Punch album review, which we will be talking about War's the Answer, which I have mentioned plenty of times in this video. But that is all for this video, and I hope you all enjoy this, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.
Take picture button.